press communications for the Trump 2020 campaign. Also, Ashley Etienne, former communications director for VP Harris, Republican strategist Anna Navarro, who's now supporting the vice president, and CNN political commentator Van Jones. Ashley, what do you make of this latest reporting?
Um, it seems like to me we've sort of lost sight of what makes Donald Trump so dangerous. So I'm glad these articles are coming back to light and really raising this issue. It's it's not the antics, the dancing, it's not the lewd comments about a golfer. It really is this point that we're not so sure where Donald Trump allegiances are. They are primarily to himself. And I believe the generals, both of them to your point, have said that he's a fascist to his core. And it not only fits a pattern, but it's what we saw with our own eyes. Let's go back to when he was president and he actually stood in Helsinki next to Putin and sided with Putin over U.S. intelligence. That he gave secrets to the Russians in the Oval Office in the early days of the administration. That he made millions and millions, not just him, but his entire family, off of foreign governments selling U.S. interests. That is who Donald Trump is, and that is what makes him so dangerous. So I'm glad we're actually getting back to the very core of what makes Donald Trump unfit for this office.
Erin, I mean, as we pointed out, the Trump campaign is denying the reporting in the Atlantic, denying that he said that about the family, the fallen soldier, denying that, and then they put out the sister of Vanessa again has said that put out a statement basically saying that they're grateful for the support that President Trump gave them. Didn't actually directly talk about whether or not Trump paid money or not. What do you make of this reporting?
There is a lot of this reporting that you're seeing right now, not only in the Atlantic, but other outlets about Donald Trump and his behavior. And you've been seeing this reporting and his comments in the media every day. It gets covered breathlessly and it hasn't moved voters at this point. So the likelihood that has an impact on the election, it's unlikely at this point. But what it does lead to is the closing argument conversation that both campaigns are trying to have right now. And while if Donald Trump turns out all of his base supporters and Kamala can't expand her map, he's probably going to be able to win this election. But if her closing argument is Trump's bad, she's clearly seeing even right now using that as an argument on TV, in interviews, in ads. It's not moving voters in the persuadable ones she needs. That is not going to be a winning closing argument for her that Donald Trump is bad because it hasn't persuaded the voters to her side yet. So the conversation is, as these stories continue to come out, is Kamala going to lead into the Trump bad but no future looking, or what she's going to bring to the table, or just end it there because it won't be enough to get her the election?
Van, I want to play something else that General Kelly told the New York Times.
I think this issue of using the military to go after American citizens is one of those things I think is a very, very bad thing. Even to say it for political purposes to get elected, I think it's a very, very bad thing, let alone actually doing it.
In your view, does this paint the former president's recent comments about using the military against the, quote, enemy from within in any kind of a new light?
Yeah, it does. And I think that there are people who are still trying to make up their mind about what to do. And I think tonight should be a very sobering moment for those people. If Kamala Harris gets elected president, what is the worst thing that she's likely to do? You might not like her tax policy. And in 2 years, you can vote in a new Congress, and 2 years after that, you can vote in a new president and get a different tax policy. If Donald Trump gets elected, and even if some of these people are bitter or mad or they're exaggerating or some of this stuff turns out not to be true, if even half of what they're saying is true, what's the worst that could happen with Donald Trump? It is an unknowable. It is beyond our ability to comprehend. And so if at this point you are at home and you're trying to figure out what should I do, tonight should give you real pause. The worst thing that Kamala Harris could do, maybe bad tax policy. We may not have a constitution by the time that someone like this is president with no guardrails. He didn't do a lot of bad stuff when he was in there before because he had people around him who wouldn't let him. Those people are all gone. You now have a Supreme Court that says he is essentially lawless. So you have a lawless president with no regard for our Constitution, and people, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the former chief of staff to the White House are screaming and yelling, saying, "My God, do not vote for this man." That should matter to people tonight. It should matter to people tonight.
And I mean, have you ever heard of an instance in modern, I mean, American presidential history of the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the general who was the chief of staff, coming forward and revealing stuff like this?
Anderson, I know John Kelly very well. General John Kelly was the commander of Southcom, which is based out of South Florida. We were neighbors in Coral Gables. He, his wife Karen, I spent a lot of time socializing with them. I spent a lot of time with them just after they had lost their son, Robert, who died in Afghanistan, serving in Afghanistan. To me, hearing John talk about this right now is chilling because it's an extraordinary step for John Kelly to take 14 days before the election, trying to warn the American people. Look, the gravitas that John Kelly has, the commitment to duty, the dedication to chain of command. This is not something he does lightly. John Kelly has not written a book. He hasn't been out there giving paid speeches, blasting Trump. He hasn't been on TV or trying to become a TV commentator. John Kelly has kept fairly quiet. This is a desperate measure trying to warn the American people not to re-elect this man because John Kelly knows him up close. I have zero doubt that John Kelly is telling the truth. John Kelly does not lie. He served admirably and honorably for decades and decades. This is a man who we should listen to. And look, if you are a staunch Trump supporter, it won't matter to you. But to those Republicans who say they have the greatest respect for the military, to those Republicans who say they are for law and order, they better heed John Kelly's words. And I hope that at least some of them take it seriously. And if they are having a hard time marking that ballot for Kamala Harris, that this is something that helps them finally make that decision. And let me also please talk about this stuff about what he said about Vanessa Guillen. If you don't believe that Donald Trump is capable of saying that $60,000 does it cost that much to bury a fucking Mexican, then you haven't been listening to Donald Trump. You haven't been listening to the way he talked about Judge Curiel as just a Mexican. You haven't been listening to the way he talked about Mexicans as criminals and rapists. You have forgotten when he said that people like me come from shithole countries. This is true to form for Donald Trump. So for those Latinos out there who think that when he says racist, offensive things, it doesn't apply to them, you are wrong. And if you are a Latino or an American with Trump amnesia, this should help to cure you.
Aaron, as we said, the Trump campaign is denying these statements about Vanessa Guillen. To Anna's point, anybody who has listened to Donald Trump, even those who support him, I mean, has heard the language that he has used. It is certainly not. I mean, I don't know that there's anyone who would say there's no way he could have possibly ever said something like that. I mean,
I think you could throw anything out there in this day and age and say, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump said that. But that shouldn't be the qualifier here. Right now, these campaigns need to focus on their closing message. I know I said it before about whether or not it's going to be, Trump bad, and that's going to be Kamala's argument. But for Trump, right now, we continue to have breathless conversations about what he's saying and not about the policy proposals. He is still owning the media conversation. And Kamala took today off, I can only assume, to prep all day outside of her 2 interviews for your interview tomorrow with her, the town hall meeting. But all of that to say, she is down on the campaign today, and he is still owning the oxygen. There is still constant conversation and noise about Donald Trump. So while it is very big for these military officials to come out and say this, that is big. I won't deny that. That is a big step for them to make, but that is still in the oxygen chamber that is getting sucked up by Donald Trump. For it to move voters is so unlikely.
I guess the question actually is this certainly this is probably not the conversation that a Trump campaign would want to be as part of the conversation. I mean, yes, it is. He's owning the news cycle in this hour, but it's because he allegedly said he wants generals like Adolf Hitler had said admiring things to his chief of staff, who went on the record saying that Hitler did some good things. These are not the kind of things I would assume a normal campaign in the closing days would want. Obviously, it's baked in. I get all. I think all of your points are absolutely accurate. But it's still, if there are some people who are undecided, it's I guess the question is, for those undecided people, do we really want to spend the next 4 years every day with this kind of stuff?
No, absolutely. I mean, this is not a news cycle that I would think Donald Trump would want. But here, let me get back to what Aaron said and what Anna said. The problem here is the Republican Party's refusal to be honest with the American people. In fact, they're misleading, intentionally deceiving the American people. I ran the first impeachment war room where Donald Trump tried to shake down another country to get dirt on Joe Biden. He violated his oath of office. We had two senators, Republican senators, right, that came to
that country was Ukraine.
Ukraine. What did I say?
No, you just said
yeah,
another
yeah.
country. You didn't name it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's important because it is a
yeah.
country now at
Absolutely,
war.
absolutely. I did. Yeah.
And the holdup was weapons to Ukraine.
Absolutely.
They are now fighting a war of
Get
desperate
into it,
point.
Anderson. Absolutely, absolutely. But the point is, they came to our impeachment war room and they told us day 2 of the trial, you're right, he did it, but we're not going to do anything about it. And then they go on TV and they lie to the American people. This is why it's not sticking, is it because the Republican Party refuses to be honest with the American people and are perpetuating these lies about Donald Trump. And the reality is Donald Trump has consistently put himself before the interests of the American people. And that should matter. And that should be part of the closing argument. It doesn't have to come from Kamala Harris. It can come from the entire apparatus of the Democratic Party. This is what we're potentially going to get for another 4 years. These unknowns about what Donald Trump is selling off in his own interests that are jeopardizing the security, the health of not just our democracy, but of our nation.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. One quick reminder.